All right, time to talk personal finance, and we have with us Charles Fakroha. He would be talking to us about proofing your finances, especially for emergency situations. And we know that right now, there's no better time to talk about that than now. Thank you for joining us, Charles.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Yeah, morning.
So,
Samson, morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Looking good.
Been a while, thank you.
how are you today?
I'm
Trust
very
you're
fine.
better, strong and healthy.
By His grace, I think I'm healed.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about proofing your finances. What does it mean?
Yes, as financial planners, therapists, we know that when you continue to plan, there are certain variables that are outside of your control.
Okay.
And that's why one of the components of your financial plan is your insurance plan. Then we also talk about an emergency fund. Now imagine our colleagues, now our friends, my fellow Nigerians, my brothers, my sisters, who are currently going through flood disaster in the various states in the country. You can imagine the trauma they are going through. Now, some of them are going to come out there more in debt. Some must have borrowed money one way or the other. For most of them are basically farmers.
Actually, and their farms are already flooded.
And I'm sure most of them, they don't have any insurance plan for their produce. Now, when the flood water recedes, when it will be difficult for them to go back to normal. But imagine those of them, few of them, who had a financial plan, who had an emergency fund, even while they are in that IDP camps, they could still do some few things, drawing from their emergency fund.
Okay.
Because this is like disaster planning. You don't know, you're just planning. You don't know when it's going to happen. So it's also part and parcel of any financial plan, if any planning at all. And that's why as financial planners we keep emphasizing it. You need to have an emergency fund.
So at what point do you set aside this emergency fund?
Once you have decided that you are doing your financial planning, it's part of the plan.
Okay.
Whether the disaster occur or the emergency occur or not, it's just like insurance. You don't know when it's going to happen, but you are planning for it. 2, 3, 4, 5 years, nothing might happen. Even if you car insurance, you might not have accident. But of course, at the end of the year, the insurance man will come and collect his money. But when it happens, you will see how it is. So for those who had that kind of emergency plan, emergency fund, they can draw from it and begin to live a normal life, pending when the water will recede. And they can bounce back immediately using their emergency fund. For those who have insurance, yes, they can. And in fact, I'm so happy today. I saw a report where NICOM is saying they are ready and they've instructed all the insurance company to ensure that they pay claims that are due based on these losses we have seen from this natural phenomenon.
But let's look at some of the what's it called now, constituents of proofed fund or an emergency fund.
Yes. One, your financial plan must have an insurance plan. That is one of the components.
Okay.
Yes, it's obvious. Then the insurance can be in various forms. Maybe you insure for natural disaster.
Okay.
That in case it happens, you can even insure for disability. You can also insure for in case you're not able to move. Maybe where you are working, they can continue to pay you. That is, the insurance firm will now pay you for these days that you are not working. It's part of planning for, because you don't know what is going to happen. Some of them could have even, of course, we have recorded deaths.
Over 600 people already dead.
Yes.
And I'm sure most of them don't have a will. So you can see that you don't need to wait till these things happen. You just have to have it in your plan. So that when it happens, then of course, we're not saying you'll be restored back 100%.
Okay.
That's why it's like, yes, at least it will give you that leverage for you to bounce back and continue your normal.
But for you to have an emergency fund, then you must have a source of income. What about those who don't even have any source of income to even start with?
we are talking of disaster victim now. Most of them are farmers. That's a form of income, whether we like it or not.
Well, there are some who didn't even have any source of livelihood.
They were not, okay, well, we are looking at those who have a bit of income, something they were doing. They were farmers. Some could be traders, you know. So we're now saying, if they've involved a financial planner, then in that plan, they should have a component, insurance plan, emergency. Some of them can be affected by a disease that will
be life-threatening.
Exactly, and they cannot go back and start living a normal life. The financial planner would have advised you, do you have a power of attorney? Maybe financial power of attorney, or even a medical power of attorney, where somebody can act on your behalf based on your health conditions. So these are things we keep talking about when we run our seminars, that financial planning is key. Because he who fails to plan is already planning to fail. So in proving your financial emergency finances, these are the little things you need to do. Like we've said, what has happened now? It has affected companies too.
Yes.
And some of them have declared what they call force majeure. That is, they cannot carry out their own part of certain agreement based on it's out of their control. So you as an individual, a farmer, or if you are a trader, you are expected to have this in your financial plan. That's an emergency fund. Yes, government will do what they can, but me and you know that these victims in these IDP camps, they will tell you these things, relief material does not even get to them. So the most important thing now is, when the water recedes and they are out, how are they going to start? What would they fall back to? And with an emergency fund, an insurance plan, then they can pick up their life from there and begin to move. That's the essence of life. Disaster will occur, but we don't know when and how it's going to happen.
Talking about emergency fund, is there a particular ratio one has to budget for it? And I'm asking because I know oftentimes with financial coaches, stockbrokers, you hear, okay, maybe 30% of your income or salary goes to this, 20%.
Yes.
So is there a particular amount and percentage rather that on a monthly basis, one should devote to the emergency fund?
That's a very intelligent question. Yes. Now, when you start off your financial plan, we said it's not a one-off issue.
No.
Or you just attend one lecture and you think you know everything, you don't want to get the experts. Yes, we've always advised that you have at least 6 months of your basic living expenses. You know what you spend, basic living expenses, in a month. We'll do a rough estimate. Maybe it's about 30,000 basic living expenses. We are saying you should have times 6 of that in an emergency fund.
Well, what would constitute your basic living expenses?
You know what is your basic living expenses.
Utility bills.
It might not be utility bill, but at least your basic feeding.
Foodstuff, transportation.
No, you're in IDP camp. That's a disaster. You can't even move. But at least that basic living expenses. Because we are saying, as soon as you leave that camp, or some people don't even go to the camp, people are still staying in their houses on top of the roof. Once the water goes down, they have lost so much. So with that, their emergency fund, they can begin to draw from it and start their life. If they have lost all their produce, their crops, they can, with that emergency fund, they can get something to buy and probably go back to the farm, as the case may be. It's to bounce back. The essence is for you to go back to what you were doing before that disaster. And more importantly, again, it's not only about the finances. There's also the psychological aspect, the emotions of it. And we are already suggesting to the government now, by the time the water recedes, and they're not just, go back to your houses, they need to be counseled. They need to seek counseling. Because some of them are already traumatized. The trauma is there and it will be difficult. So moving forward, we're going to be seeing a lot of maybe depression, a lot of mental illnesses. So, and that is why Well, we will say the government tried, because NIMET will tell you they gave a lot of advance warning.
That it's not just about those
who live in lowland areas should move to islands and all that. They say they made all those announcements, but people ask you, where do we go?
Exactly.
We don't have any.
You're providing the alternatives for them.
Okay, but to ask the question.
Yeah. It's still about the emergency funds. You know, beyond the 6 months allocation for one's basic expenses, on a monthly basis, is there still a certain ratio one should just, you know, keep adding? Or once you have that of 6 months, you can always leave it there and leave it at that?
Yes, it depends on you. You can always leave it at that.
Okay.
And of course, increase other aspects of your financial component.
Okay.
Maybe your investments, you know, your basic savings, which is different from this emergency fund. Yes, once you have had that 6 months, you know that, yes, by the grace of the Almighty, you know that any disaster that happens, obviously you don't expect it to last beyond 6 months.
Okay.
So when you get back to your feet, before things becoming normal, you won't be able to exhaust that your emergency fund. At least it will take. In fact, it's not only on natural disaster. You lose a job, and you're looking for another job. At least we expect that within 6 months you should be able to find your feet again. So it is not only for natural disaster. It could be for an accident that disable you, and you can no longer fend for yourself. What happens to your dependent? So these are some of the issues you are saying. Your insurance plan is an important component of your financial plan. Everybody should take it seriously. And in fact, if you are talking to a financial planner, you must be emphasizing on the emergency fund and of course your insurance. And there are so many types of insurance that you can take. Some of them are smiling now in the IDP camp because they know that as soon as they are out of there, you know, all what they have lost the insurance will, of course, if they present.
But with the apathy towards insurance in Nigeria, do you think that's still the case?
Yes. There was a recent report that said our attitude towards insurance has improved a little bit. People are now becoming...
Yeah, but rural areas in Bayelsa State, and how do you expect that they would be smiling?
Yes, that is the issue now. And that's why we are saying we need to take that campaign awareness to them. And of course, some of them who had 1 or 2 experiences in terms of dealing with financial institutions, they would have been told. I know some couple of smallholder farmers that we have discussed with some time ago and said, look, you need to look at this. There is an insurance company that does basically for agricultural produce. I think the Nigerian Agricultural and something agency. They have offices in some of these local government. But again, the question you ask me is, are they fully on ground? Those are the issues. And that is why we are saying you can't have a government agency established for a purpose and they are not doing it. You know, yes, I agree with you. It's difficult for people in rural areas to even begin to talk about insurance. But just like the banking system we have seen, financial system we have seen generally, like I said, even in my village, people can use their phone to make phone calls. They can use their phone to transfer. They can even patronize POS. So if we have that kind of services there, then doing micro insurance, I've seen some firms, I won't mention their names, they are into micro insurance now. These are their target audience. So that at the end of the day, we're not saying insurance will take care of everything, but at least it will take you back to a certain position where you can get back on your feet. And life goes on. Disaster must happen.
Okay, talking about disaster management and you know the role of emergency fund, let's presume the situation exceeds the 6 months you know, plan, because I mean sometimes you know you really can't forecast these things.
That's true.
You just happen to be in quotes stranded, you know, financially when the 6 months has elapsed. How do you, as a financial coach now, how do you know suggest people can navigate that tricky situation?
Well, we don't know to go too far. We had a case, COVID-19, when it came. We all thought maybe
you know in 2-3 months.
2-3 months, but what happened? We ended up staying over a year, and you could see that trauma that we all went through. Everybody experienced it, but of course, at a point, you know, some of us had to dare the virus. And said the virus that we are confronting now. You know, the food virus is even more hunger virus is even more deadly than the COVID-19 that we're not even seeing, and people dare. And you can see the problem security agencies had with people trying to prevent movement and all that. Yes, again, you know, we are human beings. There is a limit to what we can do. What we are saying, let us do our own little bit. Let's plan, at least for that foreseeable future. If it is 6 months, yes. You know, let's just plan for it and leave the rest to the Almighty.
Well, I think that's a very good place to leave it. Thank you so much for enlightening us, especially on emergency funding and proofing your finances.
Yes, our heart still goes to the
flood victims,
especially in my village. Can I mention the name of my village?
Of course.
Especially my village, Patani in Delta State, Patani local government in Delta State, where virtually all the houses are underwater. But I must commend the resilience of the people. They decided to set up their own IDP camps on top of the bridge across the river Niger. And the last night I spoke with them, they said the water is gradually receding. And but the issue now is the health implications.
Exactly.
So we're going to be seeing a lot of cholera, and we made arrangements. Some relief materials will get to them. My appeal now is to everybody in Nigeria. Please, if you are in charge of those who are taking relief material, please
deliver it.
Let it get to the genuine IDPs. Why do we take pleasure in something that is meant for suffering people, and that is when we want to embezzle it? I've listened to so many people. They've said government will send money and the money will not get to those people. We don't want to place a curse on such persons, but we are saying this is politics, and let the average Nigerian politician begin to live above board. If a task force or a committee has been set up to take care of people in IDP camps, let those relief materials get to them, because we want to see our brothers and sisters come out from those IDP camps, let the water recede, and of course, government again, we need to be proactive.
Well, I think we already talked about that extensively before now, but thank you very much for your time. Have a fantastic day. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll always be delving into sports. Please stay with us.